Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Victoria Buschman, and I am an Inuit Doctor of Conservation Biology. I'm also a postdoc at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, so I sit formally at the Greenland Institute of Natural Resources. Today, I'm here to share a little bit about the Indigenous perspective on the UNDOS process. I'd like to highlight that Indigenous communities are already doing a lot of work in marine and coastal ecosystems. Specifically, there are actually many formal and informal Indigenous observing and monitoring efforts that are ongoing, as well as, of course, research efforts. Some of these observing and monitoring efforts can be seen in platforms such as Siku, Smart Ice, and Pisuna. These three are Inuit knowledge platforms that look at data collection for different biodiversity issues, sea ice dynamics, many different variables that are of interest to researchers and decision makers that are, of course, relevant to the UNDOS initiative. Additionally, many Indigenous communities in the Arctic are also involved in the establishment and development of new protected areas in the Arctic, particularly marine protected areas. And we've seen this especially in an explosion of new protected areas in Canada over the last few years, and several more that are already proposed. But we do see new protected areas emerging in other places, such as Pikilasoswak, which is a joint bilateral proposed protected area between Canada and Greenland. Additionally, there are many regional Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations that are involved in research related to marine and coastal ecosystems. And this includes housing wildlife departments with specialists who can navigate both the sciences that are necessary for these kinds of policymaking spaces, but also the Indigenous knowledge that is one of the unique and special things that Indigenous communities are bringing to this work. One thing that I would additionally like to highlight is that because UNDOS is a UN initiative, it's also very important to Indigenous peoples that UNDOS reflects the agreements that are made on different UN human rights conventions, and this includes the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So it's going to be important, I think, to reflect on how the Arctic Action Plan is recognizing and implementing UNDRIP within this process. And this is to ensure that the initiatives and work pursued by UNDOS are ethical, equitable, fair, just, and meaningful for Indigenous communities, because as we know, the Arctic is a little bit of a unique space in that some states have recognized that Indigenous peoples are rights holders rather than stakeholders. So they occupy a slightly different space within these policy spheres. And we need to recognize that in ensuring that UNDOS is developing in a process that is supportive of Indigenous priorities, needs, knowledge, these kinds of things that are ensuring that Indigenous knowledge is respected and valued within the ocean sciences. A last note to leave here is that we have a lot to gain by working together. And I know this firsthand because as a conservation biologist, communities are really excited to be involved in research, to be involved in monitoring and observing efforts, to be involved in policymaking, so long as it is in a process that allows them to be a meaningful part of the planning, to be a meaningful part of the establishment of new programs and initiatives, and to feel as if they have had space to give what they have to give to these kinds of initiatives. So I hope that we can reflect on this a little bit as we go through this meeting. And please be in touch if you have any questions or would like to discuss anything further. Thanks.